When you've dated men, have you ever shared your sexual thoughts or the fact that you were bisexual with them? And if you did, what was typically their reaction?
Well, since I started discovering that I was bisexual, like I said, in my early 20s and accepting it, I've only been in 2 long-term relationships since then. And the first guy, I couldn't really express myself with him because he was this kind of guy who was all for it in the pornos, but in real life it was a whole other thing. And that lasted about 3 years, and I was kind of stifled with that. But then my next partner, who was going to become the father of my child, was quite accepting of it from day one. I told him right away, and he was fine with me being bi, and eventually he was fine with me wanting to experiment with women since I hadn't yet. And yeah, I could express myself with him quite well, and he wasn't one of these guys who said, oh, cool, now we can have a threesome. He wasn't really into that at all. So, and with men I've dated casually, the reactions have ranged from, okay, whatever, to, oh, cool, threesome. So there's a diversity of opinions out there on behalf of guys, I think.
You mentioned the reaction, oh, cool, threesomes, and you mentioned it in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Does that turn you off?
No, it doesn't turn me off as such. I mean, I've been in threesomes. It's not an issue. It's just the immediate assumption that bothers me, and the idea that the guy would be perceiving me as, or perceiving my bisexuality as a tool for his fantasy fulfillment. That's kind of what gets on my nerves about it. Other than that, if it's respectful, I don't have an issue with it. Like I said, it's really just, that whole kind of, fulfilling my fantasies, my pleasure, male pleasure,
Yeah, so you went, just imagined, a typical alpha male beating on his chest,
Silverback gorilla.
And that's it.
That's the image that I had in mind, too. So.
Oh, you communicated that very well, and given that this is radio, that's very important.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk about relationship structures for a bisexual person.
Okay.
Do you believe that if someone is bisexual, that the threesome situation where you have a bisexual person and then a man and a woman as well, do you think that's a given?
I don't think it's necessarily a given. At one point I thought that maybe that was the case, but since I've been involved in Unité Montréal, I've met so many people, I've seen such a diversity of ways of experiencing bisexuality that I don't think there's one standard way of experiencing relationships among bisexuals. And it ranges from the completely monogamous to the polyamorous to swingers, just like any other sexual orientation, I'd say.
One of the challenges that people have, or the public at large has, with a stereotype of a bisexual person is that a bisexual person cannot be happy or fulfilled in a monogamous relationship, being with one person, one gender, when they're attracted to the opposite gender. And I'd like your thoughts on that.
I really think it depends on the person. I mean, I know that if we take an example of the person who, for whatever reason, or because of social taboos and upbringing, have never experienced same-sex sex, for example, and they've been kind of, herded into the heterosexual category, they might get to a point in their life where, I really want to do this, and they love their partner, but they feel this need just because they've never done it. Kind of in the same way that a heterosexual who has never sexually experienced anything other than, they just kind of got married at 20 and never had sex with anyone else, might reach that point also. So I would make that comparison. Other than that, again, it's probably a question of temperament, a question of the agreement between partners. I think there's so many variables that it's hard to say there's one specific type.
In your work with Unité Montreal, what have you learned about bisexual people since being associated with that organization?
What have I learned about bisexual people? That's, I guess, kind of like what I alluded to before, that there's such a diversity of ways of experiencing experiencing it, ways of perceiving it. Some people would be perfectly content having a one-on-one relationship and then just experiencing their other sex attraction, whether it be, like if they're in a same-sex relationship, they might experience all their heterosexual attractions in their head through fantasy, and that's fine with them as long as they get to express it somehow. Other people need that physical contact with both, and there's this whole variation. Some people are emotionally attracted to one sex, and some are physically attracted to the other, or vice versa. So there's really a wide range of
Actually, could you elaborate on that more, being emotionally attracted to a gender as opposed to being physically attracted?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know some bisexual people, some friends of mine, for example, who are sexually attracted to, say, men, who enjoy having sex with men, but who wouldn't see themselves being in a long-term relationship with men. Whereas they would be in a long-term relationship with women, and there would be the sexual component as well. Okay, so there's that, and it can be the other way around, and sometimes it changes too. That's the intricacy of it all, is that people change, and our sexual needs change, and our desires change. So for some people, they might go through a period of life where they feel more hetero, even though they have same-sex attraction, or vice versa, and then they might get to a point where they feel more homosexual and still have a bit of opposite-sex attraction, but it's kind of back there in the back of their mind, or, so again, diversity.
One of the things that I don't know if we're going to have time to talk about it before we go to our break, but for a bisexual person who may be dating someone who's not bisexual, who may be totally straight or totally gay, what reassurances can a bisexual person give to their partner if there is that possibility of change down the road?
I think it would be the same reassurance that a heterosexual or homosexual person would give their partner, because everybody changes. It's not just bisexuals, except that maybe bisexuals might have more of a tendency to admit that change because they're put in that position, but I think it's the same across the board. The reassurance is, trust me when I'm telling you that you are the one that I'm going to be with, and I think that's about the best you can do, and of course follow up with your actions, otherwise it's kind of pointless.
That is very reassuring. You're listening to Frank Talks, Pleasures and Lifestyles. We'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Your inner game is as unique and personal as your signature or your fingerprints. This book provides you with the means to create your own seduction persona. By this, learn what it means to be a man and attract the women you want. Learn about how men and women think differently and how to take the lead in a relationship. This book is for you at franktalks.com. From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kerman. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.